Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Greg, good afternoon. How you doing?
I am doing well. It's been a big buzz day already, which is why we're having to roll a little bit late today, right?
Yes. Well,
SAP Sapphire Now kicked off today, and wow, what an event and what an undertaking.
yes. And we'll touch on that later on. I got a text from my mom at 12 noon, and she said she could not find the buzz, so I knew I was in trouble. But to Greg's point, we did push our start time back a couple hours for the big event that is SAP Sapphire Now Converge, and we'll talk on that momentarily.
Tell your mom it's okay. I found a pretty good buzz this weekend. So
okay. We are talking about the supply chain buzz today, and this is going to be our weekly roundup of some of the top stories in the industry, along with a passionate take, usually coming from the other side of the screen. But we're here to do one thing, and that is help increase your awareness and increase your supply chain IQ.
yeah.
So
we'll let you know if it's news or opinion.
All right.
Always.
So, hey, quick programming it before we get started here. If you enjoy our live stream episodes, hey, check out our podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. Today, we published the first episode of a new mini-series, a limited run series called This Week in Business History. We dove into the story of Charles Goodyear, as well as Big Blue, IBM, and many others. All of them were tied to events that took place the week of June 15th, going back several hundreds of years. So check that out wherever you get your podcast from. Greg, did you listen to that yet?
I haven't yet. I've been swamped trying to get everything prepared for today. And, preparation's not my gift.
That's okay. That's all right. Well, hey, before we dive into and we share one story, want to say hello to a few of the folks that are tuned in. Stefan, Mr. Reliable. We're going to have to give Stefan a nickname. He is tuned in for these live streams. He's always contributing. Stefan, hope this finds you well. Hey, Kumar is tuned in via LinkedIn. Kumar, we'd love to know where you're tuned in from. So thanks for joining us. Let's see here. Kathy from Huntington Beach, California. I bet it is gorgeous out there. Kathy.
Man, it's almost lunchtime in Huntington Beach, too. When is surf highest today?
That's right. We got to find out. I don't know.
Huntington's
Kathy,
got good
thanks
waves.
for joining us. Let's see here. The comments are popping up so quick. I'm having a hard time keeping up.
Right.
Hey, Koki. Koki says Jason Moss with Georgia Manufacturing Alliance, GMA, always speaks highly of you guys. Thought I'd listen in. Koki, welcome.
Man, I hope we don't let her down.
That's right. We can't let Koki down.
That's right.
But welcome, and thanks for joining us here on the Supply Chain Buzz. All right, so let's pause there, and I want to dive into a little bit of this day in business history.
Mm-hmm.
So, Greg, do you happen to know who this gentleman is?
I'm going to guess that's Mr. Goodyear.
The blimp gave it away?
Kidneys.
So, speaking of Charles Goodyear, who did make an appearance on today's podcast, on June 15th, that's today, June 15th, but 1844, Goodyear would receive a patent from the U.S. government for the vulcanization of rubber, and that's a term that Goodyear coined himself. The patent came on the heels of trials, tribulations, hundreds, if not thousands, of experiments by the one relentless Charles Goodyear. I wonder if he ever went by Chuck. But do you have any idea, Greg, why there was a need to vulcanize rubber? Any guesses?
I do, but I want you to say it. I have a little trivia on rubber and tires myself, so let's let you share your part.
Well, first off, so vulcanization comes from the Roman god of fire, Vulcan, and that's where Goodyear got the term from. So back in the early 19th century, rubber was really popular. However, because it was not vulcanized yet, in the summers it would melt and be just a stinky mess, and in the winters it would be really hard and it'd crack. Yep. So that was holding the rubber industry back in many ways. Vulcanization, which was really discovered on accident, because I believe, as the story goes, Goodyear knocked over some rubber and some chemicals, including sulfur, and it happened to hit on top of an oven, so it got heated, and it led to some properties that he's like, hey, we're onto something here.
Yeah.
So serendipity, which is a beautiful thing, is what helped lead Goodyear to vulcanization and furthering an industry, which of course, transportation industry. How much different would that be had that discovery not taken place?
I just saw a quote from Thomas Edison that said, "You may not get the result you want, but that does not make it useless."
That's right.
Right.
Well put, as always.
Yeah. Interesting also that tires are colored black, right? Rubber is actually white. And initially, if you look at historic pictures, the tires are actually white. I presume that they colored them black because tires driving through mud, white tires driving through mud, look pretty terrible all the time. Right. And when the streets were nothing but mud.
Right. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, so all this took place June 15th, 1844, when he got the patent that really started changing things. There's a lot more to the story, and if it interests you, check out today's podcast we release wherever you get your podcast from, including just what is the connection between Charles Goodyear and the Goodyear Company we all know and some of us love. All right. So, Greg, we're going to dive right in. We've kind of got a hard stop today, right?
Yes.
Based on the event, some of the things we're doing. So let's dive right in. On today's show, we're going to continue scanning the headlines, give you some snackable content, really. We'll get Greg and my take on some of the headlines. And of course, your input and your comments and your opinions, please do chime in. Before we dive into this first headline, Greg, let's say hello to a few other folks, okay?
Let's do it, Joshua.
So Kumar is connected with us on LinkedIn from India. So thanks for getting back to us there, Kumar. Great to have you here today. Stefan was talking about a majestic Zeppelin on that last slide, image there, which I think was Wingfoot 2. I think they've got 4. I think Goodyear's got
over the
4
Hollywood sign. I noticed. That's interesting.
That's right. Josh, you are right, Greg. Josh with Sonnen is tuned in. Really interesting company. Yep. Always a pleasure to have Josh on board. The one and only Amanda Luton.
Where else would she be?
That's right. Great to have you, Amanda. And you know what? One of the hardest working men in industry, recently published author. Now he's canvassing up the side of mountains. Don Long, great to have you here, Don, and hopefully you're doing well. We look forward to meeting you, or we look forward to tackling Stone Mountain at some point with you in an upcoming Sunday. All right, so Greg, let's dive into the first topic. Let's dive into this first topic. We shared this via social media in the last couple of days and got a lot of feedback, including some folks whose grocery stores don't look like the image in the picture there. So leading off here, our grocery stores may not look normal until the fall. So let me share a little more. So in this story from Supply Chain Dive, United Natural Foods CEO Steve Spinner said last week in an earnings call that pantry loading and restaurant shutdowns, well, they've all created an incredible and unseasonal demand for grocery stores. Now, that's nothing new, right? But suppliers, as many of us have seen, are still struggling to catch back up with that level, those enormous levels of demand.
Yeah.
In particular, Spinner remarked on the order fulfillment rates that UNFI is seeing with its suppliers that, quote, the fill rate is certainly the lowest that I've ever experienced by or seen by 1,000 plus basis points, end quote. So while Spinner said net sales increased 12% year over year for his organization in the quarter that ended May 2nd, he said stockouts and low stock levels are still holding even bigger sales gains back. So Greg, you and I chatted with a variety of CPG leaders in recent weeks, and one of them in particular has told us about what this next observation from Spinner is. Quote, the largest manufacturers had discontinued on a temporary basis thousands of items, thousands of SKUs, right, to focus solely on producing the ones that consumers need most, end quote. Greg, your take here.
My first opinion 1,000 basis points is an unnecessarily hyperbolic term to use. It's 10 percentage points is what he means, which means because the average fill rate to grocery is around 98 to 99.5%, they're still getting 88 to almost 90% fulfillment from their vendors. Now, that is dramatically lower, but 1,000 basis points is really only 10%. So, and I think part of the blame falls to the grocers because of and I've seen it, the erratic and manual nature by which they're ordering has sent inaccurate signals up the supply chain and has probably, put distributors and brands on the back foot in terms of responding to demand. So it's been a little bit difficult. Pantry stuffing has been weak. Consumers have been responsible for a lot of unique demand patterns or lack thereof. So it's going to be difficult to do it for a while. What I see is a lot of, and we saw this some months back, a lot of blame shifting here. And I think we just need to acknowledge that communication between the parties in the supply chain needs to be better in order for this to get better and to recover from situations like this.
Yep. What was interesting, as I mentioned, we put this out in social media the last couple of days, and a lot of the feedback we got was, where is this at? Because where we live, we don't see nearly this level of disruption in items. And as Amanda and I talked about previously, we use a lot of Instacart. It's been a great resource for us the last 3 months. And we've seen a lot of substitutions, but generally speaking, we've been able to get what we need.
Well, you have to also acknowledge that some of the companies that are experiencing this are groups of independent grocers, which might even have lesser systems than some of the chains do. So if you shop at a chain, you may not see the same impact that you see with independent or smaller chain grocers.
Great point. 2 other quick points before we recognize a few of the folks that are tuned in. Number one, I saw this past weekend, I saw 2 grocery commercials that touted robust supply chains in their jingle. That was the first for me.
In their jingle?
In their commercial, yeah.
Wow.
And then secondly, Kroger has an earnings call that I think you pointed out to me this week, and it'll be really interesting to see what I believe at least the U.S.'s largest grocer, what they're seeing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
All right.
It will be interesting to see that.
Jock is tuned in all the way from Brazil. So I hope this finds you well via LinkedIn down there in Brazil. Let's see here. Kevin Bell, one of our favorite live stream guests. The infamous person behind the quote. Go ahead and say it.
It is possible to take advantage of an opportunity without being opportunistic.
Very well. And Kevin shared that on a live stream with us several months ago. Kevin, hope this finds you well here in the Atlanta area. And then finally, Stefan says, I am sure the unnecessary wild ordering that Greg mentioned created an even worse bullwhip effect than usual. Some companies seem to focus on selling more than actually making sure more arrives. Great point, Stefan.
When the process becomes so emotional because a human being is involved, it's very difficult because literally the signal is different by that person's take on a particular day. I've done that job back when it was manual. So believe me, I know. And I served companies that have done that and still allow a lot of human intervention in orders. And you can see that impact every day. 84%. I think Manhattan Associates did a study. 84% of all human intervention in supply chain is wrong.
Wow. Holy cow.
Right?
That's a lot of inaccuracies.
Well, we don't have the data, or sometimes we don't remember the data, or sometimes our emotions or our instincts overwhelm us. I was the guy who said no one could know my business. No computer could know my business better than I do. And that was right for about 6 SKUs in my store.
Okay. Love it. Love it. Never a dull moment with the one and only Greg White. Okay.
Done it.
We're going to move right into the second headline here. So bots continue to be hot. According to the story from Modern Materials Handling, the autonomous delivery robots market for warehouse management is set to grow tremendously An analytical study or analysis is also commonly called from Frost and Sullivan says that the global warehouse automation market will almost double. So it was 14 billion in 2019. It's projected to go hit over 27 billion by 2025. So what do you ask are some big drivers, right, Greg?
Yeah, I do ask that. You're right, Scott. Sorry.
Ever heard of an ASRS? Automated
No.
storage and retrieval systems, which are extremely popular right now. A hot market in particular, because these systems offer increased inventory storage density, right? Reduce labor costs, and they increase inventory picking accuracy. So a lot of companies are bringing in these ASRS platforms. Also, AGV, automated guided vehicles, and AMR, autonomous mobile robots. Those are three of the big drivers that is fueling this growth. Finally, the analysis also predicted an expedited recovery in countries such as the U.S. and China due in part the large adoption of warehouse automation solutions that's already there. We've already wrapped our head around it, and companies have been investing in that for years. So, Greg, your take.
Well, we talk a lot about, people are asking us all the time about reshoring and nearshoring and that sort of thing, and how do we manage this enormous generational transition of workforce that's occurring right now. This is it. And my guess is that number, 27 billion, is probably low by 2025. Amazon started this way back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And of course, companies like Gray Orange and Geek Plus and dozens of others are out there offering all of these AGVs, AMRs, and ASRS systems. And we've been simulating it for a long time with things like voice operated picking or voice prompted picking or robotic assisted picking. Truthfully, we need to raise the bar for humans so that they can do what we're really good at and let the machines do the picking and sorting and the physical aspects of it. Right.
Excellent point. Excellent point. In fact, Victor Garcia is tuned in via LinkedIn. Victor, hope this finds you well. I'd love to find out where you're tuned in from. He says, we need human complement on decisions and humans making more value-added intervention. That's going to hurt. Quick commentary. We visited a manufacturer. It's been about a year or so ago that they had just implemented or recently had implemented the ASRS system. And the good news is the company did not let go a single human.
Yeah.
And even further, the maintenance team that takes care of everything out there on the site, they actually got more money because they sent them the training so they knew how to work on the robotics behind it and the high tech behind it. So that is a great win-win. That doesn't always happen, of course, but still, it was a neat tour for us.
So okay. I think that what happens here is that it frees up people from doing those $15 an hour jobs in a distribution center to take those 2 million skilled trade jobs that were still unfilled when we were at near full employment.
Yep.
Right. The welding jobs and other trade jobs that are better paying, more satisfying, and more fit to human to human skills. So I agree. And I think that there will be a net, either no impact or actually uplift in employment because of that. Again, remember, this generational change has 10,000 people leaving the workforce every single day. And the predominant workforces prefer analytical and technological work.
Yep.
That was not easy to say. Technological.
All right, moving right along. So, Greg, I was very hesitant and chose my words very carefully because you are the resident M&A guru. And I don't really, from what my little purview, it seems like it's at least been a solid market for a lot of transactions. We've reported
you're right.
Several.
Yep.
So I'll say that it continues to be a solid market for deals. In this headline, which is brought to us by the great people over at the Lodestar, digital freight platform Containers with a K was bought by Descartes Systems. Deal was valued at $12 million. Containers is based in the UK, and its platform offers quoting, booking, tracking, and dashboard analytics, and much, much more. Of course, Descartes Systems, most folks know, is a Canadian-based international technology company that specializes in logistics software, supply chain management software, and cloud-based services for industry. Greg, Containers leadership expects this move will help it grow and reach a broader audience. In fact, on the other side of the coin, Descartes CEO Edward Ryan was quoted as saying, quote, "Logistics service providers operate on tight margins. Those that don't move quickly to digitize their customer experience will be faced with higher costs to serve. We're looking forward to working with Containers customers, partners, and team of domain experts to help the logistics community capitalize on this opportunity." Greg, your take.
Well, I agree. First of all, and we're going to talk about this tomorrow. Can I preview that?
Sure.
We're going to talk about this tomorrow. We're dropping a new series tomorrow called Tequila, T-E-C-H, Tequila, Sunrise. I will not be drinking, as far as any of you know. But what we're going to talk about is what's going on in tech, particularly with growth, investment, and advancements in companies in supply chain tech. But this is a great example of the ability for companies like Descartes, who, while may not be the most well-known company in the industry, have long been investing in technology. In fact, a friend of mine had a company that facilitated same-day fulfillment back in 2002 called Same Day Solutions. And Descartes invested in that some years back, way ahead of its time for the time, but really cool tech. So Descartes has been visionary on some of these kind of solutions, and this is a great way to leverage up both their solution and to help fulfill a demand that they must clearly be seeing in their vast customer base with this solution. So expect to see more of this happening. We know that deals are getting funded. We know our friends at Flourish Software, right, in the cannabis supply chain industry. We know Verison just also closed a funding round, and various and sundry other companies there. I said it again, Scott. Various and sundry other companies have closed rounds, and the news continues to come in.
Yes.
So we'll talk more about that tomorrow on Tequila Sunrise. But
love it.
Yeah,
love it. Let's say hello to a few folks. Patrick Kelly, the Produce Guru, Produce Podcast. I saw over the weekend he had a great show on apples, and on the front end of the episode, he was diving into each apple and tasting it right there. It was captivating content. So Patrick, hope this finds you well.
Wait, in the store? I'm just kidding.
That'd be something. Shipping Mike Mead says, "Stay in school, kids." Probably a reference to the evolving automation in industry.
True, but not necessarily. Do skilled jobs mean technologically skilled jobs? I mean, there are people getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to do welding. Right? Plumbers are making $90,000 a year plus, and et cetera, et cetera. So,
well, Jock kind of agrees with you here. He states the jobs won't end; they will change. People are good at thinking, not repetitive work. Good stuff there from Jock in Brazil.
Yes, I intend to go down there and talk to him about that at some point.
Kathy Morrow Robertson with Logistics T&I is tuned in, at least on the front end here with LinkedIn. I'm glad you got an alert as well, Kathy. Have enjoyed. If you're not following, amongst other things, Kathy on Twitter, she is my IQ, which was really low to begin with, is raised every day by the stuff that she tweets out. She's on a lot of these earnings calls to begin with.
And also a very dedicated walker and hiker. So if you want to get motivated, watch her on Twitter, both for supply chain knowledge and for health tips.
Yep. One more comment before we move into our deep dive of today's buzz. This comes from Don, our good friend Don Long. As you have said many times, Greg, automation and manufacturing and likewise in warehousing should be to supplement our workforce, not necessarily to replace it. With automation and technological improvements, businesses should prepare for organizational redevelopment for its staff rather than downsizing. Good stuff, and well said there.
We're about to, with the and nearshoring efforts, we're about to try to replace an 805 million person workforce. We don't have enough people to do that, so we will have to augment with robotics.
Yep. All right. And real quick, I'm not sure why the comment's not appearing in my feed, but Leah Luton, my mom, is tuned in via Twitter. And I was able to see the tweet on that feed, but for some reason it's not hitting our StreamYard feed. So that's okay. Mom, hope this finds you well. Good to see you. Glad you're here.
Ask her if she heard. No, I'm just kidding. She hear that buzz comment?
All right. So, Greg, you're going to take us into a deeper dive, really answering the question, how far has the digital supply chain advanced? So tell us more.
So first of all, this article is from May 5th, which was about half the pandemic ago time span.
Yeah.
But worth a read. It's aged well over the last several weeks. It's still relevant. It talks about where supply chain has come to and where it has to go, and what sort of things transition or are required to make digital transformation and digital transition happen. So it's in Logistics Management Magazine by Bridget McRae on May 5th. How far has the digital supply chain advanced? All right, check that out. We'll put a link here in the show notes. But anyway, Capgemini's Research Institute, and you know we hold Capgemini in their supply chain practice, Cindy Lago and the rest of the team in high esteem here. Great organization doing great things for companies. They said that the spend on technologies, hardware, software, and services will cross $2 trillion by 2021. And yet, only 35% of companies are really monitoring their operations in real time. One form of digital transformation, we talk about control towers and things like that all the time. And we're going to talk more about that tomorrow morning as well. But these are the kind of things that help us. And of course, these are the kind of things that have come to light during this pandemic because, as we talked about just a few minutes ago with UNFI, that connection between retailers and suppliers is important. And of course, real-time understanding of where your goods are, where your assets are, where your people are is really, really important. So, and another, I'm just checking out some of these statistics. Only 38% of companies are giving employees the tools they need to collaborate digitally with one another. And that's actually, go ahead.
Does that surprise you? Low, high?
It does, because it's actually down in terms of percentage from just 2012. Now, the definition of digital has changed over those years. So it is pretty surprising. I mean, we ought to be farther along is the point that they're making. Now, on the other hand, there is a lot of progress being made, particularly, let's pick 2012, because companies have moved to the cloud. And when people didn't really understand what cloud meant, I used to just tell them it is a huge computer that you don't have to have in your office that has virtually unlimited power.
Right.
So that allows you to ingest and process more data and do so more rapidly and calculate more complex algorithms. And that is what is starting to change things for planning and forecasting and optimization in the supply chain, is that there is no limitation these days of power. You couldn't possibly have the amount of hardware on site that you need to do some of the calculations. I can verify that because we had to take Blue Ridge to the cloud back in 2011 precisely for that reason. We just couldn't process the data and process the calculations fast enough without it.
You see Nerfod's
he is obsessed with hair.
You know, he is a we're gonna have to have the comedy hour here at the Buzz.
Maybe we should have supply chain comedy and supply chain trivia. What
so a little
people have kind of fallen off, I think, except for a couple, the Sarah Scudder and Sarah Barnes Humphrey, still doing their happy hours.
Right.
People have kind of fallen off the bandwagon. Maybe we need a supply chain comedy hour.
I love it. I love it. You can be the headliner. All right. So getting back to digital supply chain.
Yeah. There's a ton in this article, but they talk about cloud. They talk about robotics. They talk about automation. They talk about technology supporting planning and operations and optimization. The point is not to go super deep into this article, but to encourage you to read it because it was very well researched, very well put together, and very well presented. And let me tell you, it is a read relative to today's standards. I think if we put the link up on LinkedIn, it would say something like 8-minute read or something like that. So, So be prepared, have a cup of coffee. But there's a lot in here. You know, they're talking about things like can we augment the systems that we have, or do we need to quote unquote rip and replace? Some years back, I saw companies, and I really like this trend, ceasing to replace some of their core technology systems, some of their core systems of record, like finance and accounting and inventory management. You know, what keeps track of what you've got on hand, that does the simple things. Some of those are really old technologies, and what companies were doing they would put a data layer on top of that, extract the valuable data out of these ancient systems rather than replace them, extract the data of value out of it and place it in this data layer, and then feed it to other solutions and accelerate their growth towards transformation by doing that.
Yep.
I can't tell you that there's not a better way to do it today, but I can tell you that if you can avoid replacing your ERP or finance systems and augment it with best practice or best of breed technologies or technology suites, you're going to get there a lot faster.
Yeah. Well put. It's tough to cover anything digital supply chain in a couple minutes, but Greg, I think you've done it nicely, as did the great folks over at Logistics Management, which seems to be a great source for content. So, all right. So real quick, it's been a very active stream today. Folks are getting their week started off on an energetic rate here. The stream is alive and well. So Koki had mentioned earlier, I think I shared this, the cloud equals the data centers of old, maybe, which equal the old mainframes, but all that is offline and it's cheaper. I think it's cheaper because you can pay for just what you need.
That's
it's
right.
Offsite.
It's automated to spin it down with most cloud providers. But to Koki's point, if you go all the way back to time sharing, in which I think was in the 60s, and most people did that with digital or with Cray supercomputers. I'm not even sure if Cray is still around, or IBM. You actually shared time on machines, and over time we have developed and improved that model. It's literally taken 50 plus years to get there, but it is to the point where I have a very good friend who has worked at a number of these companies, and it is to the point where if you're using the machine, you pay for it. If you don't use the machine, you don't get a bill. Well, you get a bill for zero, but still, I mean, that's highly advanced, and what they've done is they have democratized time sharing. That is what Koki is talking about, so that anyone can afford it. Even we can afford it, Scott.
Love that. Good stuff. We'll continue to cover the digital supply chain and look forward to what else it brings in the months ahead as we are into recovery and hopefully we're into the post-pandemic and we're moving on.
Check out this article. I'd love to hear what people say. In fact, I'll post something about it on LinkedIn and let's see what folks have to say.
Outstanding. All right. Amazon in trouble with the EU. Amazon's had its name written on the blackboard. So the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the European Union will be filing formal antitrust charges against Amazon. These charges mainly focus on the company's treatment, of course, of its third-party sellers. They reportedly, and this comes from the Wall Street Journal, they reportedly will accuse Amazon of using data from the third-party sellers in its competition against them. For example, using the data to launch similar products, at least the article cites that.
Right.
The charges are expected to be announced this week or next week. And this comes at the same time, Greg, where Amazon is reportedly being investigated by 2 U.S. states, both California and Washington. So a lot
after here. And we reported on this finding or this the information around these findings in the States a few weeks back. And this was not long after Amazon had told Congress that they were not doing that. And some current and former Amazon, as that story alleged, share that they are in fact doing it. I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, right? I mean, I've never met someone who's selling on Amazon who isn't afraid of Amazon stealing their data.
Right.
And I'm not, I just want to be clear. I'm not saying they're stealing their data.
Right.
But it is possible that that is a well-founded fear.
Well, you know, when the Wall Street Journal came out with that explosive investigative report, it's probably been about 4 weeks ago now, we knew that was not just going to die.
Right.
So this isn't, to your point, I don't think this is surprising to many. You know, I think all consumers, it'd be great to get down to the bottom and get out of the shadowy, you know, the murkiness between Amazon and the folks that they are co-opetition is a term we talk about a lot, but it's just we need a lot more sunlight in this area. We'll see what comes of it. But Amazon, we'll see when the EU levels those charges. All right.
When the harsh light of day hits it, I don't think Amazon's going to look very good on this topic, unfortunately. Yeah. But hopefully it prompts them to be more diligent or more fair with their sellers, whichever the finding uncovers.
Yep.
Right?
So we're going to stay with retail in this last headline. So, you know, we try not to, I had to say, hey, does the retail apocalypse continue? We don't want to give in to hyperbole, but that phrase has become quite a cliche here going back 12 months or so. So in this story from Bloomberg, as many as 25,000 stores may close for good in 2020. Of course, that'd be a record. We set the latest record in 2019 at 9,800 stores. So this would be a record by far. All this is according to a report from CoreSite Research. Amongst those stores at particular risk, stores and malls, which makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Department stores also makes a lot of sense. And clothing shops, of course, apparel, that industry has taken a bunch of lumps. So get this. According to commercial real estate company Cushman & Wakefield, the United States has the most retail selling space per capita of any country in the world, but yet the lowest sales per square foot. So this reckoning probably has been in the works for quite some time. For many, the pandemic and the widespread store closures may be the final straw, or in some cases, a ton of bricks that has broken the camel's back. Greg, what you think?
Well, it's to be expected, frankly. I mean, malls are virtually dead. I don't know if anyone lives near an old traditional mall, and yet it doesn't seem like that long ago that we were all complaining that our kids were hanging out at the mall all the time. But retail is overpositioned, even when e-commerce was not nearly as prominent as it was. And because of this blip up in e-commerce as a percentage of total retail sales, it won't fall back to where it was, which was around 8% annualized growth of e-commerce each year. It will fall back to a higher rate and a higher percentage of overall retail sales. So this is to be expected. And many, many companies, and this is a long history. Many companies, they expand too fast. They get ahead of themselves and over their skis in terms of real estate obligations, and they start to adjust their numbers to justify more locations, hoping that they will sell. This is just, this is the sins of the father visited on the son, if you will. This will end and has ended some retailers, and will wind up being a better thing for the economy. If you've heard of these zombie companies, right? The ones who are barely surviving by servicing the interest on their debt, those companies are of no value. They're a complete drag on the economy. And there are a lot of those in retail that are just surviving, waiting for some miracle to happen for them to break out and become a valuable company again.
Yeah.
So this will probably end a lot of those companies. And in the end, it will be better for consumers.
Yep. So you got a variety of questions around some of these companies, how their business has been run, right? Not in every single case, but many of them. But also, look, consumers are buying so much different, and the pandemic, in many cases, will continue to accelerate a lot of those changes in behaviors. Leah Luton is on this live cast. My mom, she placed her first Instacart order because of the pandemic, and that's just one tiny little example. The conveniences that we've all become kind of spoiled with via the Amazon effect, frankly. You had new consumers that are discovering some of these things for the first time. So the reckoning that the brick and mortar part of retail, as sad in many cases as it is, especially for the companies that are, well run or are,
I mean, we will lose some good companies in this case as well, right? And some bad ones will survive as well. So it is going to be, to quote our friend Jenny Froome from Sapix, it's going to be a reckoning, and it's not going to be pretty, but this is merely a catalyzation of the failure of many companies that were too tight on cash, overly exposed on debt and real estate, or poorly managed in terms of their growth methodology overall.
Yep. Well put. Okay. We're going to wrap. We're going to move from this news here, and we're going to do something a bit atypical for us here at The Buzz, at least on this show. So if you don't regularly read Fast Company, it's really a neat, content comes in a wide variety of angles, a wide variety of spaces. It's it offers some unique reporting, unique points of view. And so I'd welcome our listeners to check it out. Recently, Fast Company interviewed, I think this at least new to me, came out last 3 or 4 days. They interviewed a variety of Black HR leaders. So their aim was simply to get their thoughts and perspective on what's taking place now here in the States, especially. So this, we are too. We are trying to really double down on this listening tour of ours and seek out opinion and to learn and be empathetic and really discover insights and perspective from a variety of other folks, right? A lot of folks are jumping to assumptions and jumping to long-held beliefs, and that's not going to help us here. So this angle of this article really spoke to me. And then as I read it, we determined that our audience needs to hear it, especially some of the perspectives shared. So what we're going to do to our audience, I want y'all just to focus for a second on these words and strip out of your mind any assumptions, your current positions. Just try to empathize with what Janelle is saying in this perspective. So I'm gonna read this. So this comes from Janelle Peterson, People Operations Manager with Precision Hawk, one of the 5 folks they interviewed. I quote, it's excruciating having hard tear-filled conversations with my 12-year-old and 8-year-old about how some will view them without knowing their sweet, kind souls. Having the, quote, talk about how to stay out of harm's way, all while trying to preserve their innocence, knowing that it may not even make a difference. It's heavy worrying about my hardworking husband when he leaves the house to provide for the family he cherishes and loves so deeply, and at work, when even with an amazing HR leader who's making space, the job I love has had some tough days. I'm swallowing down a lump in my throat to contribute on a Zoom call, end quote. Greg, there's so much commentary and perspective and takes needed on news these days, but in my mind, that speaks volume and hardly even needs any commentary.
Yeah, I agree. We received also a link from one of our trusted advisors of, I think it was a Harvard Business Review article called Dear White Boss, which everyone should read. Everyone should read. It was very well and rationally conceived to expose the little things that happen each day to reinforce the differences that we see, we promote, we subconsciously feel, whatever. And it's worth getting that perspective just for all of us to have that aha moment, right? Yeah. I mean, what can you say to that?
I think one thing, for me at least, I want to challenge everybody. We're challenging ourselves to really explore what true empathy is, really explore all the micro assumptions that any human makes through the years of relationships and doing business and really examine and re-examine and re-examine every assumption, every position you hold, and just go out and learn from others right now. It is so needed. And, we're going to get through this time in here in our country's history. And change is going to happen. It's got to happen. But really, double down on empathy right now. It is so needed. And I appreciate everyone's understanding and about the little departure from the typical buzz subject matter here today. Okay, Greg, the good thing is we are about action here, regardless of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And we take the role of facilitating conversations and just helping give them space to happen. That's a big part of our role. So if any of what we just covered appeals to you, and you know what, even if it doesn't, it's really important to be a part of these conversations. Just go and listen. Go and put it on mute and listen. July 15th, we're going to have a very frank 90-minute discussion on the state of race and industry. We've got an outstanding panel. To quote the article that Greg shared from HBR that was written a while back, but all of a sudden is super relevant once again. We don't tee these panels up to give us the unquestionable gospel. We bring a panel because we want them to share. We really want our audience to share, and the conversation is where we're all going to benefit. So it's not about delivering the silver bullet or the magic wand. It's about facilitating the conversation. Greg, your thoughts?
We are going to get an unvarnished but professional perspective from Tandria and David and DC. So I'm really interested, particularly in Tandria's take, right? I really have a ton of respect. We've known her the longest of all these folks that we're working with. And I just really appreciate the way that she approaches everything. My strong suggestion would be listen to one of our articles or one of our episodes where we've interviewed Tandria. She is a no excuses for anything kind of person. She understands and thinks about how to survive in the world that she grew up in, and how to help people of any race, color, creed, orientation to survive in this world today. And she does it every single day.
Yeah. Well said. Okay. So join us July 15th. You can go to supplychainnowradio.com. We'll make it easy. I think we've got the direct link in the show notes here. Please join us. Even if you're not going to actively participate, come and learn. Much like that. That's what I'm looking forward to doing. Okay. Want to say hello to just a few folks here right quick as we start to wrap up. Our friend Tom Valentine. I think, Tom, you and Greg co-presented or served on a panel to an engineering consortium here recently. So,
yes,
Tom,
a week ago. It seems like yesterday, but yes, it was a week ago. Tom was fantastic, by the way.
When is he not? He's salt of the earth.
Yeah.
Stefan, thank you for sharing. Stefan put the link
to
the article that Greg was sharing in the comments, at least on the LinkedIn feed. So, Amanda, why don't we take that from Stefan and share that out across each of the streams, make it really easy for folks to check out that article. Going back to the comment, Jaden, greetings from Utah. Jaden, thanks for tuning in to our buzz here today on LinkedIn. Great to have you. Let's see. Amanda had some comments here about the comments we just read. And she says, hey, painful to read. I try to put myself in her shoes, and it would be a constant source of fear and anxiety.
Well, think about the talk that you just have with your kids about bullying, or one of my daughters, thankfully very athletic now, but was heavy as a kid, right? And she had that. But that's just that. That's something that can change, right? So, everybody wants to protect their kids. You want them to be able to remain young and naive as long as possible, and having to expose them to the realities of the world because of who they are at such a young age. It's tough.
Yep. All right. So we talked about July 15th. Let's talk about June 25th. So we're going in reverse order. Just 10 days from now, we've got a really interesting webinar coming up, all about ERP in the post-COVID, the post-pandemic environment that we all are hoping is going to be here ASAP. In some parts of the world, it is. We just found out today, so we're teaming up with Rootstock on this webinar on June 25th, and it's free. By the way, you can go to supplychainradio.com to register. We found out today, Greg, that Rootstock is going to be bringing a customer and someone that knows ERP and has gone through the journey and is well prepared for the for this next phase we're going into. So I'm looking forward to that, June 25th. And Greg, should be a neat session, huh?
Yeah, I love the juxtaposition. Right, this week is SAP's Sapphire Now Conference. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I love the juxtaposition of little ERP and big ERP to get a perspective on the marketplace and how that impacts just what we were talking about, digital transformation and whether you should rip and replace, right, in terms of your foundational core systems.
Yep. So join us June 25th. Real quick aside to Saidi, also Mr. Reliable. He's on a lot of these live streams. Yep. Hope this finds you well where you are, Saidi. Okay. I think we have kind of teased this up a little bit. So today did kick off the SAP Sapphire Now Reimagined. The Sapphire Now Converge is the kind of the digital marketplace for all kinds of content and discussions. And Greg and I are really pleased to be part of that. Greg, we saw a lot this morning.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, this is why this kicked off at 10:45. It's why we had to adjust the buzz time frame. So appreciate your rolling with the punches there. And in this day and age of internet overload, we had a few challenges. That's right. Yeah. The good news is, in the update we got from the SAP team, if you're interested, not only is registration free, but it will continue to stream on SAP's LinkedIn account and their Twitter account.
Right.
Greg, I really enjoyed, in particular, one of the senior Porsche leader sharing about how already their digital transformation, where they leverage a lot of SAP's offerings, have taken their sales reports from 3 months, their roll up from 3 months to 20 seconds.
Yep.
I love that. What was one of your favorite moments?
Two things. One, Christian Klein, the CEO, he opened up the discussion with Lutz from Porsche, talking about how you can configure your own vehicle. And they went on to tell us about the real-time interaction. Let's say you change your mind from non-leather to leather seats or whatever. That's real time while the vehicle is being built. So that's impressive. And the other thing, and I think this is really very important, there were lots of discussions around digital transformation and enterprise communication and coordination. But the thing that really stood out to me was Christian recognizes that the marketplace can no longer tolerate 3, 4, 7-year ERP implementations, and has outlined a plan for how to get the deployment of certain solutions down to 4 months. Right? Imagine that. Has anyone ever said that in the history of Earth? SAP implemented 4 months.
Wow.
Never has that been said before. And that is a really, really impressive initiative. So I hope they pull it off. That is throwing down the gauntlet to the rest of the supply chain and big tech community.
Yep. So if you missed today, hey, no worries. There's 3+ more days.
Yep.
You can go and register at the link we've got in the show notes. Hey, if you have a problem registering, shoot Amanda a note, Amanda@supplychainradio.com, and we'll make sure we get you plugged in or share what we know at the time. As you might imagine, with any big event, especially any big digital event right now in this era, there was a lot of shifting gears and whatnot. But shoot Amanda a note, and we'll get you pointed in the right direction.
Don't forget it's free.
Yeah.
Right. That's my favorite.
Absolutely. Again, supplychainnowradio.com. Really have enjoyed this. This was a bit of the expedited buzz here today. We're going to finish up about 15 minutes earlier than where we typically finish up. Greg, we've got a couple of calls lined up to get some experts on about USMCA. So we've got to get to work, right?
Yeah, we got to do that. We haven't been talking about USMCA, and it's about time to get back to it, don't you think?
Absolutely. So big thanks to all of our audience members for tuning in. Sorry we couldn't get some of those great comments out there. Looked like y'all had some very live discussions in the streams. Find more resources, conversations, meaningful stories, all about business and the world of global supply chain at supplychainnowradio.com. On behalf of Greg White, this is Scott Luton wishing y'all a wonderful week ahead. Do good, give forward, and be the change. And with that said, we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.